First, just a word about my brother in good right there, Congressman McGovern. You know, there's that adage that people come to Congress to change the world, but the only thing that changes is usually the member, and not always for the better. I just want to say that Jim McGovern is one of the most consistent humans I've ever met. He is a man of unrivaled moral clarity and principled integrity and conviction, and he has been indefatigable in his cause to end hunger. And I just want to again thank him for his example and his leadership here today. And of course, it's always good to join Senator Booker. So we thank him for joining us as well. I want to begin with the words of Angela Y. Davis, who said, "I'm no longer accepting the things I cannot change. I'm changing the things that I can no longer accept." Food insecurity is a policy choice. We have become tolerant to the suffering of our neighbors, while our neighbors feel invisible. They feel palpable fear and anxiety and trauma, and they feel shame, when the shame really belongs to all of us for our inaction, for our tolerance to their suffering. And as Congressman McGovern so aptly pointed out there, this is a solvable problem. And so we find ourselves with this humanitarian crisis because of inaction, because of a lack of moral clarity, because of a lack of political will and courage. This is the moment where we tackle that deficit of empathy, that deficit of political will and courage. Proud to be here today in solidarity with every family in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and across our nation who knows the palpable fear of not knowing where their next meal will come from. We're here today for those who have faced the harsh reality that they don't have enough healthy food to feed both themselves and their children. Let me make it plain. Food insecurity is traumatic. It is trauma, plain and simple. It is an unspeakable trauma and a form of policy violence that society has inflicted on our most vulnerable and marginalized neighbors. It is a trauma that we have the tools, the capacity, and the responsibility to end. And there is no time like the present for us to act while we continue to use words like reckoning, an unprecedented moment for our country. Well, people are experiencing unprecedented hurt, unprecedented hunger, unprecedented trauma, and we must meet the moment with unprecedented leadership, with unprecedented coalition, with unprecedented convening, with unprecedented legislating, with unprecedented investment. This is a humanitarian crisis that demands of us a humanitarian response. Hunger has been a national concern for years, but the pandemic has elevated it to a national crisis that is expected to touch the lives of 42 million Americans, including folks in my home state of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, our home state, where the COVID crisis caused food insecurity to double, and where the height of the pandemic saw 1 in 6 people struggling to afford food. The statistic was even worse for Black, Hispanic, and Latinx households, with children there, 1 in 3, facing food insecurity. So we're here today to call on President Biden to partner with us and to act with urgency to meet the moment that this crisis demands, and to convene a White House conference to confront food insecurity and hunger head on. Now, convening this critical conference is an important step forward that will move us closer to eradicating hunger. We all know all too well that trauma affects people intersectionally. So we must uplift the voices of our most marginalized and collect the data necessary to truly understand the disparate impacts of this crisis in our communities. Our collective response has to be one that is robust and comprehensive, that leaves no community behind. So often I've said, and seek to practice this, that the people closest to the pain should be the closest to the power, driving and informing the policy making. It's why I've always sought to use my platform as an elected official to uplift the voices and concerns of those who have too often been ignored and left out of our public discourse. As a Boston City Councilor, I convened the City Council's first ever listening-only session to hear directly from some 400 community members impacted by gun violence. As a member of Congress, may my forever oversight chairman rest in power, Elijah Cummings, serving on the Oversight Committee, I convened the first ever congressional hearings on childhood trauma, which we know is only growing because poverty is traumatic, because fear of deportation is traumatic, because being unhoused is traumatic, being displaced is traumatic, exposure to gun violence, domestic violence is traumatic, and hunger is traumatic. And earlier this year, for all the reasons I just enumerated, I corresponded asking the White House to have a trauma-informed recovery, asking President Biden to hold a White House summit dedicated to addressing our nation's growing trauma crisis. So when it comes to examining how to address our hunger crisis, our trauma crisis, and those that are caught at the intersection of both, I can think of no better platform than the convening power of the White House. So again, I thank my brother in arms here, one of the most consistent humans I've ever met. And I thank Senator Booker for recognizing the urgency that this moment demands. I'm proud to join you both in this call to action and to urge my colleagues to support this bill, because those facing food insecurity cannot and should no longer have to wait. This is not their shame to bear, it is ours.
Amen.
Thank you.